YouTube, Mr. Gibson Guy here. Got a new video for you. Last night I was on YouTube just watching a few videos, and I came across a guy that's one of my favorites. That's Braden at Langley Outdoor Academy, and he does a lot of firearms videos, and he had come out with a new one. I enjoy the work that he does. He does a real good job with them. And his video was about how did the AR-15 get to where it is? And I thought, well, this is an interesting subject. And he was talking about various things, and that the AR-15 has become the most popular rifle in America. It has been for some time now. And I watched it, and he was doing a real good job with what he was covering. But I thought, there's a hole in this. There's something that's missing, and that is what led us up to this, how the AR-15 got there. Now, if you watch YouTube, you can get a lot of videos about Eugene Stoner and Armalite and Fairchild Aircraft and Colt and all the history of Vietnam, the development of the M16, General Curtis LeMay. You can go on and on for hours and hours about the AR-15 and the M16 that was spawned from it. But then between that and the assault rifle ban, it's kind of just gets glazed over. Now, I'm somebody who started shooting 60 years ago, 65 years ago, 60 years ago, I guess. My father first taught me how to shoot. I was 22, and I've been an enthusiastic shooter ever since then. I do other stuff too, but I've always been a shooter and one who's interested in firearms and studied firearms. I think it's an amazing subject. It's kind of looking at history and put the two together. It has a lot to do with our own country and how it was started and how it became what it has. So I'm always interested in firearms and the development of firearms. It's an interesting science to study. But on this subject of the AR-15, I've lived through these years, and so I was there to see things that some younger guys like Braden, they wouldn't know about it because they weren't born at the time. It was before their time, and there's a lot of the history there, and I'd like to kind of fill in the gaps here, if he'll let me. I didn't ask him, but his picture's on the computer screen right now, so same video. But I want to try to fill in because I'm one of the old guys now, and most of the people watching are going to be like Braden. They're younger people, and so I can fill you in on some of the stuff that went on. First of all, for development of the AR-15, we have to look at the development of the round, and that takes us back to post-war Europe after World War II, and what was going on then. Because after World War I and then World War II, we've seen this tremendous destruction of the whole continent of Europe, and all sorts of, every problem that we solved, we caused 10 more problems from it. And one of the things that happened is that the Europeans were looking at all this destruction that had happened twice in the same century already, and they're afraid it's going to happen again. And so they have this weird view of it, and they start talking about, can we have like warfare that is not so destructive and kills so many people? And so they kind of start floating this idea for, as NATO is forming, for can we have like a less lethal round? And if you go back all the way into the end of the 19th century, with the development of smokeless powder and the introduction of the beginning of modern day firearms, we come up with a shoulder fired rifle that they decide with smokeless powder it's going to work best with a projectile of 150 to 250 grains, 30 caliber, pushed by a pretty good sized slug and range load of powder. This is a 30 caliber called a Winchester 30-30, and it's a center fire and 170 grain bullet. This would be a less lethal round. This is the 223 Remington, also called 5.56 NATO, and this is, rather than a 30 caliber, this is a 22 caliber slug. This is 170 grains, this is 55, so this is 3 times the weight of this one. It goes down into the casing further too. So there's more to the bullet than you see. And this slug, when you got hit with this, with a whole bunch of smokeless powder propellant behind it, if you get hit anywhere around center mass, you are done for. And then the Europeans came up with the idea, why don't we come up with a sub-caliber, like a 22, and a very light round with a smaller charge. And the idea is this could incapacitate somebody, but it's much less likely to kill them. And so after World War II, with the development of NATO, we started seeing this interest in doing this. Now, in the 1950s, they decided that the M1 Garand, which was great in World War II, was just too heavy to carry around, so they wanted something a little bit lighter, and they'd had the 30 caliber carbines that were underpowered, but they were very popular with the troops because it was easy to carry, and you carry a lot of ammo, and it didn't weigh you down like these big 10-pound rifles shooting a 30-06 or a 308 Winchester. So there was a move that we needed something like that, and that's where the guy Eugene Stoner comes along, and he says, oh, well, hey, instead of wood, why don't we use plastic? Instead of all this steel, maybe some of it we could use aluminum, and we could make a gun which would be chambered for this lighter firing round and make it something that's easier to manufacture, can be made less expensively, and can give troops more firepower with a smaller bullet. And that was where his original idea for the AR-15 came from. It was centered around the round that looked like it was going to be the new thing. So now we have a new gun coming to market, and you can see all, the Air Force wanted to buy them, the Marines wanted to buy them, the Army didn't want to buy them, then they came out with the M16 fully auto, and well, they wanted that one, and so we kind of ordered a bunch of M14s to put in the box and store away or something. But we got to the AR-15. But there's one other thing about this bullet, and that is that a bullet which is not designed to be deadly to a human, is designed to incapacitate but not to kill, is also not going to be the best hunting round. And so as these guns with chambered in 223, like the Ruger Mini 14 and the AR-15 start appearing on the market, people take them hunting, and there's a lot of reports of people shooting deer and the deer run off, and maybe they die an hour or two later and they suffer and everything like that. And so they start looking into this, and they find that these little rounds of non-lethal bullets are not good for hunting. It's not much more than shooting a regular .22, and most places don't allow you to hunt deer with .22, and AR-15 really is shooting a .22, so they start making it illegal And so people that bought AR-15s or the Ruger Mini 14s in 223, they now have a gun which is good for shooting squirrels, shooting rabbits, shooting coyotes, shooting prairie dogs, shooting foxes, anything that comes in and eats your chickens, you could use it for. You know what else you could use for that? A Marlin Model 60, 22 caliber semi-automatic, maybe with a 4-power scope on the top. And this gun, you can go to Kmart at the time, because they had Kmarts then, you could buy this for 60 bucks, maybe even with a scope. And you could buy a little tiny box of 22 long rifles to shoot your Marlin, 50 rounds for 85 cents. Or you could pick up a Colt AR-15 for about 10 times the price of your Marlin to do the same thing. So what we had was a rifle which is popular for militaries and that is bought by governments, and even some police departments would say, that's a military weapon, we'll get something like that. And police departments and security firms and stuff like that, they have a market for them. But it's an expensive, heavy 22 to be carrying around, and it doesn't really work too well on that, for that role. So the Colt is, has license from Armalite the production of these and been selling them to the government for military and law enforcement purposes, and to going all around the world and selling them to militaries of other countries. But they have their made for the commercial or consumer market, civilian market, AR-15s, which are not M16s, and they're expensive, they're kind of ugly looking, and compared to something like this, nice wood and smooth lines and everything like that, it's lighter weight, shoots the same diameter bullet. So Colt is selling these on contracts, but the civilian market, it's not going anywhere. And I remember as a kid, all through the 70s and 80s, I would pick up a gun magazine, and when they had like their gun digest, the annual buyer's guide and stuff like that, what guns they have, and I would leaf through the rifles, and I could always find something that looked like an M16 under Colt. They would have a few of those, and it was AR-15s, and they were listed and advertised, but you never saw one in a store because nobody bought them. It was a question that nobody asked. In other words, the answer to a question nobody asked. Yes, that's how you say it. Now, if you look at mine, you see that I have mine set up in configuration much like an early M16 from the 1960s. Now, same with that's different. That's sliding butt stock. And I've thought about getting the regular fixed plastic stock to go on here. I was going to get it originally, but I still have this on. I kind of got used to the adjustable thing. And it has the clamshell around the fore end up here. Grab carry handle, although you see this one is removable. Iron sights in it. And this is just regular setup like the old one. This is also a 20-inch barrel there. Nowadays the M4 setup with a 16-inch barrel is much more popular, and they don't have sights and don't have carry handle, and they have a bunch of optics and flashlights and lasers and bells and whistles and everything attached to them, just to make it even heavier. I was never going to get an assault rifle myself. I had no interest in the AR-15 because of all the stuff that I just told you. To me, for home defense or an assault rifle to chase off multiple attackers, I would pick the Winchester model 1894, even 100 years later. Yes, it was first introduced in 1894, shooting the same cartridge, being basically the same gun, and you can still well, you can get used ones now. I don't know, they have a Japanese version of the Winchester that comes here now, but they're really, really expensive. But to me, that was a rifle, and that's one you could hunt deer with, you can hunt big game with, you can shoot bears or pigs or elk, maybe a moose, I don't know. But that's if you needed to feed your family, you could do that with that gun, with the 223 Remington AR-15. You could shoot small games, but you guys are going to get tired of eating rabbits and squirrels after a while. So let's take a side trip here to see how we got to where we are. And for that, I'm going to try to stay out of the politics part of it. But how did we get the 1994 assault weapon ban? Because that's really at the heart of the entire AR-15 story. That's the pivotal moment with that. And I've never met Bill Clinton. I guess most of us don't ever meet presidents. If I ever get to meet Bill Clinton, not that I'm looking forward to it, but I do have one question that I'd like to ask him, and that's about this assault rifle ban. There are no records to show what happened, and we can only make educated guesses from what's going on at the time. Bill Clinton got elected president, and he had a lot of political favors to pay back. And one of those was he had a lot of support from the anti-gun people, the anti-Second Amendment. You know, we have a lot of different names for them right now. I would say at that time it was probably the Brady Project. This was before Bloomberg and some of these things that are more modern. But early people would have been handgun control, not really for assault rifles, but generally, and Brady Project. And there was not a whole handful of different gun rights groups either. There was NRA. So we could make an educated guess and picture that Bill had a meeting in the Oval Office, and he had a representative, probably from the Brady Project, and somebody from the NRA, and he was saying, you know, guys, we got to meet some middle ground here. Your people want one thing, your people want something else. Your people want to ban a gun, your people want to not ban a gun. So can we find something in the middle? Right? You know, and you would say, well, how do you find something in the middle? And I'm not sticking up for anybody here. I'm just making observations of how this, how things developed as they did. My guess is that it probably says, well, how about if we temporarily ban something? And the NRA says, I don't like it, but I can work with it. You know, how long are we talking about? And then they would, 5 years, 2 years, 10 years, 20 years. And Bill says, all right, well, you know, I'm in my first term and I might get reelected. I don't know after this goes through, but after 6 more years, I'm safe, because then it becomes Al's problem. So finally we said, how about 10 years? Okay, 10 years, I'm in the clear. So your people know that. And then it's like, what are we banning? And nobody can think of anything. And so finally Bill says to the NRA guy, what's the least popular gun that is made? And the NRA says, well, you know, everybody likes guns. We don't have unpopular guns. Oh, no, you got to have something that is not that popular. And he thinks, you know what? Come to think of it, I think Colt is still making that AR-15. Yeah, they make it. Well, what's the story with that? I said, well, Colt has a license. They sell them to police departments. They sell them to law enforcement units. They sell them to the government. They sell them to other governments. And they sell a civilian one, but nobody ever buys it. Nobody likes it. And the NRA guy would be telling the truth, because in 1994, before the ban, nobody cared one bit about the AR-15. It was garbage that nobody cared about. Nobody bought it, nobody owned it, nobody wanted it. And Bill, we can work with this. We got a gun, and how about we ban the production of the gun for civilian use? All the guns that are existing, we can't do anything about that. They're already out there. And people can buy and sell those as they want. But we can ban production of guns that are selling to the public. You can still produce them, which is what all your production is, and sell them to governments. You can sell them to law enforcement. You can sell them to anybody that has a title from anybody who's using tax money. They can buy it. In fact, how about tell Colt, if they'll go along with this, I'll order 20,000 M16s for the Army. How about that? I can get that through. That'll more than cover their cost. Oh, that would more than cover it. You know what? Colt could go for that. And then we got a 10-year sunset. Well, no, we got a 10-year. The guy from Brady is going to say, no, well, let's see how the results of this. Because if we ban this gun and deaths go way down, then the assault rifle ban worked. And the NRA guy says, and if the crimes don't go way down, then the assault rifle ban didn't work. Okay, 10 years, we'll go for it. So they have an agreement. And something like that is probably going to explain how Clinton got his name on the first gun ban. It doesn't really ban guns. It ends, and the manufacturer continues to make the guns, just not for the civilian market. So that's, it just depends on where they're being shipped to from the factory. That's all that counts. And then, to go into Brandon's point and finish up, I have to tell you how, after decades of not having an AR-15, I ended up having an AR-15. Because now I do have one. And I bought it recently. I bought this in 2020, actually. And I wasn't sure about it at first. I bought it in pieces. But what I saw happening at the time really weighed heavy upon me. And I have a buddy who's a real AR-15 nut. He's got a bunch of AR pistols and all kinds of stuff like that. I just have this one, and that's all I'm interested in. And he bugged me about it for years, about, you should get an AR, you should get an AR, you should get an AR, yeah. And I got my Winchester. I like my 30-30. It's got a lot more knockdown power than any silly little AR. But something happened in the year 2020. We had the COVID mess, and we had the summer riots. What happened was that the left, the extreme radical left, was told that Trump was going to get reelected, and we needed to have violence and marching and protest and burning cities for this summer. And so the mindless, useful idiots followed their marching orders, and they went out and protested, and they burned cities, and they attacked police departments, and they turned over police cars, and they killed people, and they broke windows, and they looted and robbed, and all kinds of things were going on. And I sat back here in Florida and watched and saying, you know what? You people deserve this. You did this to yourselves. You allow yourselves to be taken over by these whack jobs, and it's going to happen. But I'm in Florida, and I'm safe here. It's not going to happen. We even had some protests in town one day, and I drove by and I saw it, and it was pathetic, but it was a Florida version of that. Is that, you know, some kids skipped school to come and show up down by the courthouse and be there, and the newspaper showed up and a couple of photographers. That was it. But it wasn't going to happen to us. And then there were these riots in St. Louis, and this is much further south than most of these riots had been taking place, way up in the north in crazy land. But in St. Louis, we're moving quite a bit further south, and they're stopping traffic on the interstates and shutting down cars and people trying to get through and causing as much problem as possible. And I thought, well, this is getting closer. But then something else happened, and this was the big moment. This was, I think, just about as big as the assault rifle ban of 1994. And that was that some of these Antifa and BLM terrorists left the city and they headed out to the suburbs. Now all law enforcement is wrapped up with what's going on in the city, and they're all running out there. And in the suburbs, there's no cops left. And so there was this nice neighborhood, and there was a bunch of Antifa and BLM rioters, and CNN and MSNBC camera crews going along, following them. And they come up to this gated community. They start climbing over the gate, they start tearing down the gate, and they have their Molotov cocktails, and they have their rocks, and they have all the other mayhem that they bring with them. And they just climb across the gate, tear down the gate, and they all start walking down the street looking for cars to burn up, to turn over. And there's not going to be any police coming, and there's camera crews, so they want to get coverage. And out in front of this house are this husband and wife couple, the McCloskeys. And Mrs. McCloskey foolishly is out there with her pistol with no ammo in it, just holding it. She really shouldn't have done that. She should have had ammo. If you're going to show your gun, you better be able to fire it. And Mr. McCloskey, and he's out there with his AR-15. And I'm going to imagine probably had a few spare magazines in his back pockets, had a magazine in the gun, and he definitely had ammo in his AR-15. And he's standing out there like that with his AR-15, and all these rioters are coming by, and they see him, and they don't know much about guns, but they have a pretty good idea. If he starts picking them off, he's just going to keep shooting, because this is a 20-round mag here. He can pull off 20 rounds, hit that button. All he has to do is charge it, and he's got another 30 rounds ready to go. And then after that one's empty, he can put in another and another and another. And he may not have the knockdown power that a .30 caliber rifle will have, but he's got unlimited number of rounds that are going to come out of that rifle. And he doesn't need the police, because what this gun can do is it can stop 30 people, and it can stop 30 more people, and it can stop 30 more people, and it can stop 30 more people, depending on how many magazines he has. I have about a dozen of them in here. Most of them I haven't even opened yet, but they're ready. And I have more canisters filled with 223 and 5.56 NATO ammo ready for this. And that is why these guns are so popular. That is why this is the gun that the left is determined to ban, because this gun, a whole bunch of 30-round magazines, means they can never accomplish their plans, because there's 100 million Americans that have these rifles and these magazines and these boxes and boxes of ammo, and they can just pick them off and pick them off and pick them off. And no rioters are ever going to be successful when these are everywhere and everybody's armed and everybody is able to defend themselves. So the assault rifle ban made the price of AR-15 skyrocket, and everybody wanted one. So when the ban expired, other companies had gone to Colt and licensed production of these, and there was so much demand for the rifle that nobody wanted before, but suddenly everybody wanted. And that's how the rifle that was the most disliked rifle in America became the most coveted rifle in America. Kind of a convoluted trip, but that's the whole story. So I'll put a link in for Braden's video if you want to watch it. He did a good job with it. I thank you for watching this, especially stayed through to the end. I hope you found it informative, and maybe you can give me a like and a subscribe. Helps the channel. And other than that, until next time, this is Mr. Gibson Guy out.